Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. And I want to tell you all the little story here. If you're watching online, you may see that I'm rocking some Notre Dame gear today, and that is in honor of my guest, which is Dr. Brian Bausano. Dr. Bausano, thank you so much for taking some time to spend with me and tell the listeners why we have this connection.
Yeah. Well, I am not only did Marcus and I meet at the hospital that sort of inspired his career and how he inspires others, but I also am an alumnus of University of Notre Dame, class of 2000, Keough Hall. For those who attended Notre Dame, that's always the important thing to list is where you stayed your 4 years. But I was the inaugural class at Keough Hall, University of Notre Dame. So I was a biology major and theology minor, which is unusual for a physician. They almost all go through the pre-professional major, but I was a biology major.
Interesting choice of major and minor, right?
Yeah. A juxtaposition, no doubt, but one I loved. Absolutely.
Certainly. I have had quite a few students over the last several years that were on that same sort of track that you took, and I always like having conversations with these students because you can tell that their interests are wide and varied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you and I met.
I think
It's well. You don't mean to cut you off there, but you and I met what 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
Yeah, 2 years
And
ago. Yeah.
And I was interested in talking to you because not only did we have the Notre Dame connection, but you also alluded to the fact that you work at the very hospital that saved my life. So being an ER doctor at the place that saved my life, that made a big impression on me. And can you tell us a little bit, because you're more than just a typical staff ER doc. You're now running the show, correct?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's actually funny. I guess it's not funny, but life is always full of circle moments, right? And how things just seem to fall into place. The way I became an ER doctor is a little bit started at Notre Dame, actually. And I'll share this story without trying to not be too emotional, but it was my junior year, and I was working. I worked my whole time at Notre Dame to pay off some of my tuition, as well as make a little extra money in the dining halls there, as well as working in the computer cluster at the College of Business. And my junior year, I was working in the computer cluster, and there was a senior named Justin Broombaugh who was working with his classmates on a project, and suddenly fell over. Was breathing really weird, and stopped breathing, and ended up dying that night. Somebody called 911. One of his classmates started CPR, and he passed away. And I remember standing there not knowing what the hell to do. And I just didn't know how to help him. And I remember distinctly feeling like I never want to feel that way again. I never want to feel like I can't help somebody again. And I already was on the path to, going to med school, but that sort of solidified that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And when I got into medical school and went through the various specialties, etc., one of the reasons I landed on emergency medicine is that you really have to know a bit about every specialty. You have to know a little bit about the entire human body and the array of all of the different sort of presentations to be able to care for everybody that comes in the door. And so that's how I got into emergency medicine, was to be able to care for anybody. The sort of mantra of emergency medicine is any patient, anytime, anywhere. And so I've used that over the past 15 years, starting as an educator, and now pivoted to leading the operations in the emergency department, to design how we care for patients best, not just at our academic center at the hospital you were cared for, but across our region. So that's a little bit of a, you know, story about how I got to where I am today.
So I have several questions. First of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your friend, and you say he just fell over.
Yeah, I actually didn't know him,
Oh, okay. I'm
and
sorry.
yeah, it wasn't a friend. He was just a student that was working on a project. I was just working as the, I change printer paper, check people in and out of their computers. These were in the old days when you did not have a laptop, when nobody had phones. The internet was not wired. There was no Wi-Fi. Like, God, I'm dating myself so bad. But people had to come to computer clusters if they didn't have a computer in their room, and work on projects together at computer clusters. So I just would check people in and out. I didn't know them at all.
Hmm.
Um, and but when you're, I was at the time, I was 20 years old. Death was never even an option. Death was not something that you even thought about. You were indestructible. And to see somebody that was your age just uh, die in front of you was, alarming to say the least. Downright scary, right? And especially not to know what to do to help them, was yeah, it's tragic.
So it inspires you to go into emergency medicine. You spend the first half of your career educating future emergency docs,
Mm-hmm.
and now into the 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 practice, right? The systems and such. I'd love to hear more about this, because I know that your heart is to protect that patient and physician or caregiver relationship. So how do you do that on a big scale with a big operation like a single ER, much less half a dozen?
Um, Great
It's a
question.
$1 million question, right?
It's really hard, and I don't do it. The team does it, right? And the key here is that you have to build a team, and you have to build a team that has a singular purpose. I think the thing that I've realized, the older I get and the grayer I get, is that everyone in life has a purpose, whether they realize that or not. Everybody is here on this earth for a purpose, and we're all, I think, searching for that purpose. We've all, at some point, lost our way in looking for that purpose sometimes. And the most outstanding people that you meet are usually aligned with that purpose. And I think that, what the people that I try to emulate have put together teams that really align purposes together. And so what I've tried to do is put together a team of medical directors at all the EDs that we work in that have the same purpose, which is see every patient that walks in our doors, and not only care for them well, but make them feel that care. It's one thing to actually care for somebody, in a way that their heart attack is cared for, their stroke is cared for, their trauma is cared for. But to make them feel that care is another thing. And I think those are, to me, those two things are hand in hand. Very hard to accomplish, but really that's how you do it at a system level. Is you have a team of people who all are aligned with that goal.
The heartbeat of leadership right there, getting a good team around you, right?
That's right. Got to, if you don't have a team, it doesn't matter what you try to do. You cannot row a boat by yourself forever. You can try, and you can get some distance, but your arms get tired after a while.
Mm, mm. Good analogy there. So your years of being in the emergency department, I'm sure you've treated countless patients. It sounds like you have patients, not patients, but team members under your care that you're leading. There seem to be so many examples to draw from for the question that's the one that I pose to every guest, and it's the one that my pre-meds get at the beginning of their first writing assignment of the semester, is to write about a time, just a little 2-page reflection about a time that someone was there for you or that you were there for somebody else, much like Jennifer was for me when I was in the emergency department, holding my hand, saying, "I'm here." Does do any specific stories come to mind whenever we say a story about a time that someone's been there for you, or vice versa, that you've been there for another?
Yeah. So my intern year, I remember distinctly. I was working in our what we call our trauma critical care bay, TCC, as it's affectionately called, or for short, at Barnes Jewish Hospital, which is our like level one, trauma center. And we had a tragic case of a brother and a best friend get in a car accident with another brother at T-boned at a small little country farm road. This is 20 years ago now, 25 years ago. Um, and they all passed away. And two of them had gotten flown to the Barnes ER, and I had to tell all the family. And I just remember how emotionally charged that was. And this has happened, gosh, a lot of times in 20 years. It's not just one time that I've had to tell, um, you know, families that their loved one has passed away, but it's probably the first one that as a brand new doctor, had to tell a family that their loved one had passed away, and it was really tough for me emotionally. Terrible for them, but tough for me because I really carried that. And I went out to our trauma bay and just fried. I remember just breaking down emotionally, and my senior resident at the time came out and just sat there with me and put a hand on my shoulder and just stood there with me for about 5 minutes. Didn't say anything. Didn't didn't try to say it's all going to be okay. Just stood there and let me have just let my emotions sort of run their course. And when I had kind of gotten all the emotions out, just talked to me about how I felt, how things were, um, reassured me that this was a normal sort of reaction, and that this is a human moment. This is humanity at its best and at its worst. And I am blessed to be able to see that every shift. And people ask me in my personal life all the time, how do you work in the ER? How do you see that all the time? And I really take it as that it's a blessing to be able to see everything that I do see. Um, and I think if you take it any other way, you burn out. That moment where he allowed me to sort of have all of my emotions and then acknowledge that this is normal, it's real, cry, have that full emotional experience, was really important for me. And I still tell my residents all the time, as I'm teaching at the bedside, like, the old Jimmy Valvano quote, like, allow yourself to be moved every day, your emotions to be moved to the point of crying, to the point of laughing, etc. Allow that when you're on shift in emergency medicine. When you don't, you lose that touch with the humanity that you see, and that um, is a recipe for burnout, and that's a recipe for missing important clinical clues. Um, you don't establish that trust with your patients, and you can really um, harm yourself that way.
How do you keep from harming yourself that way? How do you protect yourself from burnout or compassion fatigue, or just when you've seen too much for one shift?
Two strategies. I think allowing yourself to have the full range of emotions, whether it's in private or in public, um, but giving yourself 30 seconds in between patients is super important. You really can't. I've seen the mistake being made, and I've made the mistake myself of just going from one patient experience to the next without taking that mental and physical break. And I really, I will take the phone away from my residents and like go to the cafeteria and get a soda. Go outside for a minute, take a beat, come back. Um, Whatever it is, sometimes it doesn't have to be long. You just need to take a breath. That I think is hugely, people just underestimate what just 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 5 minutes of time and space does for the human emotion and brain. Um, and allowing yourself we're in a fast paced specialty. That's a long amount of time. Um, but just giving yourself that moment is really important. We are really blessed at our institution that we have sort of multiple doctors working, but when you're at a single coverage ER, it's hard to do that. So you have to be much more intentional about it and really um, tell your nurse, like, I just need a minute. I just need 1 minute to think. I just need 1 minute break. I just need to go to the bathroom for 1 minute. Even if you go to the bathroom for a minute, just in private, or walk out to the ambulance bay for a minute. I just need 1 minute. Um, it's just really important to take that minute for yourself. If you don't, um, it's actually hurts your patients even as much as it does you. And so be a little selfish, because it really does help everybody else on the shift too. Just for a minute. That's it.
It almost seems like it would diffuse some of the emotional charge that goes along with something so heavy as having to inform a family member that their child or brother or sister is now dead. I mean, it just seems necessary that we honor that the best way that we can. And I want to go back to that because um, who taught you how to deliver bad news?
Great question. So a couple attendings um, when I was so I never learned it in medical school. It wasn't part of our curriculum. I mean, we had done a couple scenarios here and there, but it wasn't like a real simulation. Simulation really wasn't back in 2003, 2004 wasn't really a big thing then. Um, but it was an on the job training sort of thing. And so the first few, you would go in with your attending, and they would lead it. You would sort of be a silent person that would watch them do it. Watch them do a couple of them, and then you would do it with them in watching you. And then once you felt comfortable and they felt comfortable with you doing it, you could do it on your own. It's just much like procedures or whatever. Is you have to be trained how to do it. Um, there isn't a lot in at the time. There wasn't a lot of emphasis in medical schools on how to do it. Fortunately, we've gotten much better in our medical training in doing that. There's a much higher emphasis. I see med students say much more prepared emotionally to do this, and we are in residency training. We emphasize it in simulation in sort of lower stakes environments first on how to do this before doing it in live training, just so that we sort of take that emotional high stakes environment out of it so that people can practice the mechanics of it first before getting into that sort of emotionally charged environment, for the first time.
I'm reflecting on when the docs told me that I would never see again, and the weight of that moment, and how
Mm.
a patient and a family member is going to remember every tiniest microsecond of that interaction for the rest of their lives. And it's just so important that we take such care with such a sacred moment as that, such a painful moment too, um, for so many people. And maybe does your background in theology help with that?
Um, I think it probably does. I think that I don't think you have to have a minor in theology, but I think that probably my faith does. It's really hard um, for me personally to imagine not having some sort of faith and doing this job. It's easy for me to understand how people do this job and say, how is there a God with all the stuff that we see? But I think the opposite. And so I think that, I think that that's really, you would be shocked at the amount of people that ask me at the bedside to pray with them. They just say, are you Christian? And I say, yes. And they say, will you pray with me? I say, sure. Um, and we have chaplains and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of times they just want their doctor to, which I was very surprised at coming into medicine in general. I assumed it'd be pretty much agnostic, but people are in their worst moments, right? And they are really looking for help, and in whatever form it is. Uh, if I can be that help, I might not be able to cure whatever. I might not be able to reverse whatever. I might not be able to treat whatever. But if I can ease their spirit in some way, sure, I'm all for it. Whatever you might need.
I just keep thinking compassionate connection. You're making a compassionate connection with a patient, and
Hmm.
you didn't have to do anything except agree to pray with them. And
Yeah.
that's a pretty easy yes to say. Maybe not all the time, depending on how long-winded a patient may get, but certainly such a necessary part of the work too. Um,
Of all the things I get asked to do on a shift, that's probably the easiest, right?
yeah,
Other than the cost of time, um, of all the ways I get pulled in different directions to do things and click and dictate and call somebody or deal with a difficult patient or whatever it might be, um, that's the easiest thing to do, right? Somebody
yeah.
asks me for a sandwich, I'm like, sure, that's easy, right? Like, there are things that are difficult to do, and there are things that are easy to do. And so I as I teach, I tell my residents, like, don't make this hard. This is like the easiest thing you're going to do all day. And that's one of those things that is not only easy, but is pleasant a lot of the times. And again, if it helps them in any way, great. It's just added. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Um, what do you think are some common misconceptions, or what are the questions that whenever people find out that you're an emergency physician that they want to know? I mean, is the first question that people ask is the pit real? Or what is the question that most people ask?
yeah, I think the pit, they're all have some dramatization, right? Like my boring shifts where nothing happens, etc. Um, but I think the pit is the most accurate show that I've seen for what emergency medicine is like, and so much so I can't watch it. It's like
Yeah.
I'm on shift. That first episode was a little too real for me and hit a little too close to home for me. And I tried watching it. I just can't do it. Um,
I had much the
so
same
I
experience the first time trying to watch that. I walked to the bedroom and my wife was watching it, and they were doing a crike on somebody. And I can stand up. in front of audiences like I did with you a few years ago and talk about my own crike, but witnessing it done on TV, I've not watched an episode since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad to know that I'm not the only person that it hits close to home for.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two things, right? It's like if you worked, no matter where you worked, it's like if you worked programming computers, would you watch a TV show dedicated to just programming computers? Probably not, because that's what you do every day. But I think also there are some serious emotional things and a little bit of trauma that comes along with working in the emergency department. And not everybody wants to relive those moments, no matter how much, whatever the defense mechanisms I talked about earlier and the tactics are for avoiding burnout, there is still trauma experienced, right? Our nurses and our staff and our secretaries and our cleaning crews, our EVS crews, our security, they all experience that trauma. And despite their tactics and self defense mechanisms to protect themselves against that, they still may not want to experience that on TV, even though it's entertaining. But I do tell people watch it because it tells you what I do for a living, right? And so if you want to see, if you have a loved one out there who works in the emergency department in any facet, whether it's a physician or a nurse or any of those jobs I listed, X-ray tech, whatever, watch the pit, because that is what your loved one experiences on shift. And those are I think pretty representative experiences. Again, some of it's dramatized, but I think a lot of it's pretty real.
My oldest daughter is an ER nurse, and yeah, same thing. We get some of the stories coming back through. I want to go back to something you were just saying there, the almost the residue that emotional residue or trauma residue that's still left on us emotionally after doing this kind of deep caregiving work. Um,
Mhm.
I guess where I come at that from and where my training goes is back to narrative to try to help that. Um,
Mhm.
where do you go, whether it's formal or informal, to try to neutralize some of that difficulty that just inherently goes with the job?
So, you know, uh, being going to Notre Dame, I'm a huge football fan, and I whether my learners, med students, residents, or whatever on shift or my team likes it, I use a lot of football analogies. And so, one of the things I use a lot is to be an excellent emergency medicine physician, and I think this probably applies to a lot of roles in the emergency department. You have to be like um, a Pro Bowl cornerback or the best cornerback in the NFL. Every single Hall of Fame cornerback, every cornerback you want to list that is just an all timer, for every interception, great play, awesome, tackle that you can list that they've made, they've been burned for a touchdown probably 5 times more than that. So you have to have that same mentality that even though you just got burned for a touchdown, you have to come back on the next play. And I guarantee you, every single one of those cornerbacks comes back and they say, I am the best NFL cornerback in the league. You have to come back with the next play and say, that patient that I just lost, I'm not going to let it affect this next patient I'm going to see. And you honor that last patient's experience um, by bringing something with you to that next patient. So, what did I learn from that last patient experience? Could I have done something better? Could I, have could I have ordered something different, or just honor their experience by using that emotion for the next patient to try to help them better? You know, that is, I think, what I try to do in my everyday practice is honor those patients before you, before this one, that didn't go well. The patient that I diagnosed with cancer, that on Christmas Day, that was terrible. How do I go to the next patient and say, you don't have cancer? I'm glad to say your CAT scan was normal. Use that trauma from that last patient that you had to tell really bad news to give good news to the next patient. And so, how do you then honor that last bad encounter to bring that to the next patient and to the next patient after that? Same type of thing. You got to just, I'm the best. I'm going to be the best ER physician that I can be for this patient. Doesn't matter what happened to the last patient. I'm going to be the best ER physician I can for this patient. Just like that cornerback that got burnt on the last play. I know I have the skills. I know I can be the best cornerback for this next play, even though the last play didn't go as well as I had hoped. I can be the best ER physician for this next patient, no matter what. And that's what I'm going to do. And I think that's what I constantly teach and preach. Bring that energy every time. And after the shift, you let the emotion wash over. You go out to for beers or tacos or whatever it is with your, teammates. You sort of live some of that trauma, right? Maybe it's through jokes and through dark humor. Maybe it's through crying. Maybe it's through just sharing that emotion openly. But you debrief a little bit and you move on. But you really try to honor the previous bad experience through trying to be the best you can with the next patient.
I love it. I love it. And I guess that really kind of brings us to my last question for you, which is maybe a simple one, maybe not. But I ask, if you had the world's largest billboard on top of the world's tallest mountain, what is the message that you would want to broadcast to humanity?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think it's hard not to bring in all like the current world we live in to that, and all this kind of stuff that we have going on. But I think at the end of the day, for me personally, the biggest billboard that I can scream is take care of each other. For me, that's very simple. Take care of everybody who walks in the ER. Take care of each other. That's
Your
the biggest
patients,
billboard I can have.
That's beautiful. And your patients benefit from that. Your colleagues benefit from that. Your subordinates benefit from that. Your team members benefit from that. So take care of each other. And thank you for helping me take care of a few different insights today and some new perspectives on compassion and courage. So thank you, Dr. Bausano. I appreciate it. Any final remarks before we wrap up today?
No, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate the invitation, and I love the theme, and I love the perspective of a former patient who really brings that. I think it's just so important for us to remember that we are treating people. It's very easy in this day and age to think of this as an assembly line. It's so easy to get wrapped up. I do it myself in metrics and numbers and data. I do it every day. And to just, at the end of the day, remember that patients are humans just like you and me. Patients are humans just like our family members. I ask my team all the time, if this was your mom, would you want them treated like this? If this was your loved one, would you want them treated like this? We got to remember that at the end of the day, and that's where that kind of take care of each other comes into play. So thanks for carrying this banner. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for being with me today. Listeners, thank you for being part of this episode of Compassion and Courage. This, again, is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, inspire resilience, and provide perspective. Please visit marcusengel.com for keynote speaking needs, consulting, narrative medicine workshops, narrative nursing workshops, etc., etc. And we will see you all next time on the next episode of Compassion and Courage.